So, welcome to Jumbo Eyes and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's newspaper or the important news items in that day's newspaper in a very short span of time, around 20-25 minutes. All right. Now, current affairs form a very important portion of your UPSC syllabus, therefore, covering it on a daily basis is very important. But you cannot spend your entire day covering the newspaper or reading the newspaper. Therefore, to facilitate you, we shortlist the important news items from that day's newspaper and cover it within 20 to 25 minutes. That's all. All you have to do is just watch this lecture for 20 to 25 minutes and then revise this lecture from our PDF file shared on our Telegram channel. Spend another 20 to 25 minutes revising this lecture and you're done for the day. You don't have to worry about current affairs for the rest of your day. All right. So today we are going to be covering November 9, 2024 newspaper, and the important news items that featured in today's newspaper are as following. Okay. So in total, we'll be focusing on 4 topics. Number one, Supreme Court actually gave a test for minority institution. Okay. If you have watched yesterday's lecture, you know that Supreme Court recently gave a verdict regarding the minority status for Aligarh Muslim University. In that judgment, Supreme Court has also given a test. It is basically a criteria to judge whether a institution, educational institution, is a minority one or a majority one. Okay, so Supreme Court has given a criteria to judge the minority status of an educational institution. Okay, so what is that criteria? We'll talk about this. Then recently, UP government came out with new rules to choose its own DGP, state police chief, right? But that has brought UP government into a bit of a controversy. Okay, so what is this issue of police chief appointment or appointment of Director General of Police (DGP), and what sort of background it has? Okay, the background it has is related to Prakash Singh case in 2006, which is related to police reform. So we'll cover that also. Then recently, a news article was published in Indian Express which talked about Bibek Debroy Committee on Railway Reforms. So, some of the recommendations given by Bibek Debroy ji were accepted by the government, but some recommendations are still not implemented. So, what was this committee all about? What did it recommend? How many recommendations were implemented and how many weren't? We'll talk about this. And in the end, we'll talk about discovery of X-rays way back in 1895. Who discovered them? How were they discovered? What sort of applications you extract from X-rays? We'll talk about this. All right. So we'll be focusing our attention on these 4 topics. Let's start with topic number 1, which is Supreme Court's test for minority institution. Now, if you have watched yesterday's lecture, you know that a 7-judge constitutional bench was constituted to check whether Aligarh Muslim University is qualified for being categorized as minority institution or not. So Supreme Court has ruled that Aligarh Muslim University is not disqualified for being categorized as a minority institution. Though whether it has minority status or not, that would be decided by a separate bench. But the 7-judge constitutional bench says that Aligarh Muslim University is qualified to get this basically. Okay. Now, minority status is very important for various universities because the management of minority institutions have greater control over their day-to-day administration. They have minimal governmental interference. In fact, they can provide 50% reservation to seats for their minorities. Okay, 50% seat reservation for minorities. Plus, government interference is at its minimum. So, it is a good status to have, minority institution. Okay. Now, Aligarh Muslim University's minority status was put to question in Supreme Court. And Supreme Court has ruled that Aligarh Muslim University is not disqualified. Whether it has minority status or not, that would be decided by a separate bench, but it is not disqualified. Plus, side by side, Supreme Court, the 7-judge bench, actually gave 2 qualifications or 2 criterias to judge whether an institute can be a minority institution or not. Okay. So, to determine if an institution actually has a minority character, the court laid down certain criteria or indicia that must be considered as part of twofold test. Okay. So, whenever a court, any future bench of a high court or a Supreme Court, while deciding the status of an educational institution, while deciding the minority status of an educational institution, the Supreme Court says that every court shall apply this twofold test. Okay. the in this twofold test, part number one is establishment. What does it mean? The court must determine the genesis or origin of that minority institution. So court must go back into history and look for the origin of this institution. The court can look at letters exchanged by people who established this institution, okay, newspaper articles given about this institution, autobiographies, biographies. The court will go back into the origin of this institution, the purpose of its establishment, and what was the idea behind establishing this institution. Okay, and while investigating these questions, if it is found that this institution was established for minorities, then first test or first fold of this twofold test is passed. Okay, so AMU can easily pass this test because history is full of examples that Sir Syed Ahmed Khan wanted to create AMU for Muslims, for betterment of Muslims. Okay, then we'll talk about administration. The second fold of this twofold test is administration. Now the court has said that it is not necessary that the administration for a minority institution shall be carried out by minorities only. You can have members from other communities as well. Okay, but the courts can look at the administrative setup to see whether the administration is carried out for the welfare of minority community or not. Okay, while it is not necessary to have only minority members in the board of administrators, but administrative setup can be looked into in this second fold by the court to check whether the administration is being carried out for the betterment of minority community or not. All right. Plus, this 7 judge bench, while giving this test, also gave core essentials of minority character. Okay, so it gave 4 core essential features of minority character. While the purpose of establishing a minority institution should be the conservation of language and culture, it need not be the only purpose. Okay, though Article 30 of the Constitution allows for the establishment of minority institution, and the reason for that is that minority communities should be allowed to conserve their language and culture. But it cannot be the only purpose. Okay, the other purpose can be education, also providing education, social welfare, and all that. Minority institution will not lose its minority character by admitting students belonging to non-minorities. This is also important. If Aligarh Muslim University admits Hindu or Sikh students or Christian students, it won't lose its minority status. Okay. Secular education can be imparted at a minority institution without affecting its minority character. So, if there is an educational institution for minorities or for Muslims, let's suppose, then it can teach physics, chemistry, biology. That won't change its minority status. Okay. Plus, if a minority institution has received aid from government, no student in that university can be forced to participate in a religious instruction. So, if it is receiving aid from the government, you cannot force the students of that university to participate in religious instruction. And if the institution is fully maintained by government, then it cannot provide religious instruction, whether that's for Muslim, Sikh, Christian, anything. Okay. However, these institutions must still be considered minority institutions. Okay, so these are the core features of minority character, and that twofold test, which is establishment and administration, is known to you now. Okay, that's about it. Now let's shift focus to second topic of the day: issue of police chief appointment. Now, what is the issue? Look, Uttar Pradesh government has framed new rules for appointing the state's DGP, the head of state police. Okay, Director General of Police. Now, the reason why Uttar Pradesh government has framed new rules is because recently Supreme Court issued notices to 8 states. One of these 8 states was UP. And what were these 8 states doing? Look, back in 2006, Supreme Court actually gave directions as to how different states should appoint their DGPs. Okay? Now, 8 of these states were not following these directions given by Supreme Court in 2006. And how were they violating these directions? Well, they were not appointing a full-time DGP, they were appointing temporary DGPs to somehow avoid the directions given by Supreme Court. Okay, Supreme Court actually gave specific directions. Some of those directions were related to how should you appoint Director General of Police. But to avoid those directions, these 8 states were appointing temporary DGPs. So in 2018 and 19, Supreme Court issued notices to these states asking them, what are you doing? Okay, what are you doing about these 2006 directions? Okay, so in response to that, Uttar Pradesh government framed new rules. Okay, DGPs are currently appointed based on the directions of Supreme Court in the Prakash Singh case 2006. Now, what was Prakash Singh case? Now look, here is Mr. Prakash Singh. He was the former DGP of Uttar Pradesh also, and he was an IPS officer. After retirement, he saw certain problems in the policing of the country, in the police functioning of the country. Okay, so therefore, he wanted strict police reforms in the police of India or Indian police. Okay, so that he approached Supreme Court, filing a public interest litigation. Okay, and he proposed certain police reforms, and Supreme Court, while accepting his recommendations, gave directions to different states to implement the reforms proposed by Mr. Prakash Singh. Okay, so these directions were given by Supreme Court in 2006. So the state government is supposed to prepare, and now Supreme Court basically gave seven directions to different state police. Okay, these seven directions were to be implemented by these state governments as per Prakash Singh. Okay, so the name of the case was Prakash Singh case, and the directions were given by Supreme Court. These were seven in number. One of these directions were related to appointment of DGP. Okay, now what was that system? So as per Supreme Court's directives, how are DGPs appointed? So state government is supposed to prepare and send to UPSC a list of senior most eligible officers. Okay, so senior most police officers, a list will be created and given to UPSC. Okay, 3 months before the retirement of current DGP. So for appointment of DGP, Supreme Court has said what you have to do is the state government should prepare a list of senior most officers. Okay, 3 months before the retirement of current DGP and give it to UPSC. UPSC will shortlist 3 officers. And from these 3 officers, the state government can choose one and appoint him or her the DGP. Supreme Court has said that you have to remember that the DGP so appointed should have a minimum tenure of 2 years and should have at least 6 months of service left. Okay, but 8 states were not following this direction. That is why Prakash Singh had to approach Supreme Court again in 2018. All right, now background of Prakash Singh case. So basically in Prakash Singh case, the Supreme Court gave 7 directives with a view to bring in police reforms. Now these 7 directives were aimed to reform police system, to reform it in such a way that there is minimum political interference. Currently the police system in India suffers because of high level of political interference. So to stop that, these 7 reforms should be done. So one of this was establishment of State Security Commission that will that will recommend policy related to policing. Okay. Then appointment of DGP through merit-based transparent process that Supreme Court has said would be done by UPS, and a secure minimum tenure of 2 years. Ensure that other police officers on operational duties like SPs and HOs are also provided a minimum tenure of 2 years. Okay, generally these SHOs and SPs listen to politicians because politicians have the power of transferring them. But if you guarantee them a minimum tenure of 2 years, they would work on their own and they won't be pressurized by politicians. Okay, so this was the recommendation. Then within the police, you have to create two wings in which different officers would work forever. Okay, investigation wing and law and order wing. Law and order will have separate officers, investigation would have separate officers. This should be done to improve efficiency. Then police establishment board. This police establishment board will decide on transfers of officers below the rank of DSP. So again, politicians won't be able to pressurize these officers with the transfers. Okay, police establishment board would create an independent board to take care of transfers. Then police complaint authority at state level for officers above the rank of DSP and at district level for officers below the rank of DSP. Okay, civilians can give complaints. Then National Security Commission at union level for selection and placement of chiefs of central police organizations like CRPF, CISF, and all that. Okay, so these were the 7 directives. Remember them. All right. Okay. All right. Next news item is Committee on Railway Reforms. So this committee was Bibek Debroy committee, okay, to completely reform Indian railways, and this committee gave its report in 2015. But an article was published in the news recently in 2024, which talked about whether all the recommendations of Bibek Debroy committee have been implemented or not. Okay, While some of the recommendations have been taken on board, the overarching recommendation, the most important recommendation of Vivek Debroy to transform Indian Railways was liberalization of Indian Railways, has not been taken on board yet. All right. Now, what were the major recommendations given by Vivek Debroy committee? This is a very small news. Okay, not much time would be taken. I won't spend much time on this. Okay, because this was submitted way back in 2015. But what were the recommendations given by Mr. Vivek Debroy ji to reform Indian Railways? First of all, he talked about liberalization of Indian Railways, which has not been done by the government completely because of strong opposition. You must have heard about this in the news also. People criticize the government that it is trying to sell, privatize Indian railways, privatize airways, privatizing. I mean, this government is being criticized for privatizing a lot of things, right? So, because of a lot of opposition, government has not been able to liberalize Indian railways. Then, another recommendation given by Vivek Debroy was related to autonomy to field officers. Okay, GMs and district railway managers or division railway managers and general managers should be given more autonomy to take decisions. Okay, this has been done by government. This recommendation has been accepted. Then the railway board should be restructured. Chairman should be given the post of CEO for independent decision making powers. Then an independent entity should be created which will decide the prices of tickets based on commercial reasons. Okay, now government accepted that also, and a rail development authority was created which decides on prices and competition promotion. Then accounting reforms, accounts, railway accounts should be done separately. Railway budget should be merged within the union budget. This was also this recommendation was also given by Vivek Debroy ji, and this was accepted. Then Indian Railways performs various other roles and responsibilities also. For example, Indian Railways runs various educational facilities for its employees. It runs various hotels, hospitals. Okay. So these are non-core responsibilities of Indian Railways. Indian Railways should be tasked with running Indian Railways only, not these non-core responsibilities. So this was also recommended. Rashtriya Rail Sanraksha Kosh, a new fund with 1 lakh crore corpus to improve safety in Indian Railways. This was also accepted. And tech upgradation of Indian Railways. This was also accepted. All right, that's about it. Now let's shift focus to our last news item of the day, which is discovery of X-rays. This is also a short news item. Again, basically, this is. I have included this news to make you remember certain names. Okay. Now look, on November 8th, 1895, X-rays were discovered for the very first time. You know about X-rays? Whenever there is a fracture in your bone, all doctors advise you to get a X-ray done. Okay, that X-ray would give an image of your bone, right? So these X-rays were discovered in 1895 on November 8th by a scientist called Röntgen. Okay, Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen, and he discovered these rays by accident. In fact, after discovery, he wrote a special article in which he named these rays special rays. Then he called them X radiation. In fact, this name was also given by him. Okay? Because, first of all, what he found in his lab was something very different. And he said that there is a new category of radiations. Let's call them X radiation. Okay? In fact, the first Nobel Prize in physics in 1901 was given to him. So, the first Nobel Prize for physics was given to Wilhelm Röntgen for X-ray. So remember these facts. Okay. First Nobel Prize in physics was given to this person for discovery of X-rays. Okay. He discovered it on November 8th, 1895. Now, what are X-rays? So these are a form of electromagnetic radiations which have very short wavelength. So their wavelength is low, but their frequency is high. That is why their energy is high. That is why the penetrating power is high. Hence, X rays can penetrate your skin, but they cannot penetrate your bones. And that is why they are used in generating images of bones. So, it is a form of electromagnetic radiation with high energy, high frequency, and shorter wavelength than visible light. It can pass through most objects, including the body, and produce internal structure images. Now, how is it produced? This is not important for you, but where is it used? This is important. It is widely used in science, medicine, well, of course, in medicine. Okay, industry and security applications. In fact, at airports, whenever you put your luggage bags on a conveyor belt and they are scanned for any suspicious object, well, they use x-rays for that too. Okay, x-rays are used to scan your luggage bag also. So they are used in industry, security applications, and of course in the field of medicine. In fact, in the field of medicine, discovery of x-rays actually led to other technologies also, like MRI, CT scan, ultrasound, echocardiograph. These are also dependent on the discovery of x-rays. So x-ray discovery has been very important. But for your examination, just remember these facts: this person, and Nobel Prize, and all that, all these facts. All right. And with that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation, though it would add more value if you are consistent and regular with this lecture series. Plus, do not forget to spend another 20 to 25 minutes revising this lecture from our PDF file shared on our Telegram channel. The link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section below. Just click on that link. It will take you to our Telegram channel, and from there you can download the PDF for this lecture. All right. On that note, I'll be signing off. Thank you so much, everyone.